day 34. What does this mean for the state of New York, having at least some of these food stamps covered, and how long can the administration keep that going?
Well, assuming they're talking about depleting the emergency fund, that's roughly $6 billion, and food stamps for an entire month under SNAP benefits is over $9 billion. So, you know, theoretically, this will extend benefits for a few weeks. But again, we shouldn't even be in this situation. This should have been resolved weeks ago. House Republicans passed the Clean CR back in the middle of September to keep the government funded and open and fully fund SNAP and WIC through November 21st so that we could actually negotiate over the final appropriations package, as well as other issues, including the ACA tax credits. But Democrats, led by Chuck Schumer, voted 14 times to defund SNAP, to defund WIC, to make sure that our military, our air traffic controllers, our Border Patrol agents were not getting paid. So while it's important that we make sure SNAP is funded and deplete the emergency fund, the fact is all of this could be resolved very simply if Senate Democrats would do their job, as they did 13 times under Joe Biden, and vote yes to fund the government.
Yeah, and we know where you're at on this, Congressman. I wonder, do you believe the polling when it comes to the blame game? Because this does seem to be informing some Democrats' decisions on this. The NBC polls, the most recent, 45% of Americans blame Republicans, 33% blame Democrats. Do you buy those numbers?
Well, this is what's fundamentally wrong. If you're governing by polls, if you're governing based on politics, this is why crap doesn't get done. The fundamental point here is that there's a very simple solution. The clean continuing resolution. Both parties have passed it over the years. There's no reason to shut the government down. All you're doing is creating hardship for the American people. You're using people that rely on benefits like SNAP and WIC. As Chuck Schumer said, quote, every day gets better for us. And as Catherine Clark said, this is about leverage. It's wrong. I don't care who's, quote unquote, winning based on the polls. The American people are losing because of the stupidity being played in Washington. Pass the Clean CR, fund the government, make sure programs like SNAP and WIC have the resources needed for the American people to put food on their tables. It's not a game.
You know, we were
It's
just
absurd
talking
that this is what people are focused on, whether or not who's winning in the polls. Who cares? Well, that's not the issue.
We were just talking to the old Senate sage, Bill Hoagland, before you joined us. I don't know if you heard any of our conversation of the fact that the date on the CR could soon begin to be a challenge. Even if Democrats showed up tomorrow and said, hey, we're gonna do something different here, we're gonna start voting or talking, we'd be walking up against a potential shutdown again on November 21st. I know how many times you've made clear that Democrats have voted against this, but at a certain point, the timeline is going to be broken, right? Do we need to extend that, put a new date on it? What would be the process in changing that deadline?
Well, clearly, there's going to have to be an additional CR after the November 21st deadline. But in the immediate, they need to end this shutdown. So they need to vote yes on the CR that's been sitting in the Senate for over a month. And then we can focus on an extension, whether it's through the end of the year, whether it's into January of next year. I don't think there is support for a full year CR. I think there's a lot of issues that have to be addressed as part of the appropriations process. So I'm not in favor of a full year CR. I think most members are not in favor of a full year CR. We got to get to work, and we need to ensure that the government agencies are funded, that the workforce is being paid, that critical programs like SNAP and WIC are fully funded. Let's do our jobs, and that requires passing the Clean CR that's been sitting in the Senate for over a month. Then, obviously, we're going to need to pass an additional CR, date to be determined. But the objective should be to finish the appropriations work before the end of the year.
I have to admit, I was surprised to hear Jason Smith, who chairs the Ways and Means Committee, tell us on the air that he supported a full year CR, which gives us a sense of how difficult appropriating has become. Congressman, I want to ask you about the mayoral race here in town. President Trump was asked about it on 60 Minutes. You probably heard what he said about Andrew Cuomo. Let's let everyone hear for the sake of our audience. Here's the president on CBS.
It's going to be hard for me as the president to give a lot of money to New York because if you have a communist running New York, all you're doing is wasting the money you're sending there. So I don't know that he's won, and I'm not a fan of Cuomo one way or the other, but if it's going to be between a bad Democrat and a communist, I'm going to pick the bad Democrat all the time, to be honest with you.
Where's your head on this, Congressman? If it is, as it appears, there's going to be a New York Mayor Mamdani. If that in fact happens, do you worry about federal funding for the city?
Well, it's interesting to see President Trump and Mike Bloomberg on the same page. I know Mike Bloomberg has supported and endorsed Andrew Cuomo. From my vantage point, it's a little bit of a bridge too far to endorse Andrew Cuomo for me. So many of the challenges facing New York, from cashless bail to sanctuary state policies to shutting down Indian Point and banning natural gas, were policies at his hands. But as the president said, when given a choice, and in this case, based on the polls, the choice is really between Mamdani and Cuomo. It's a choice between the lesser of two evils. As far as I'm concerned, an avowed socialist Marxist who talks about seizing the means of production, banning private property ownership, freezing the rent, raising taxes by $9 billion on New Yorkers. He wants to defund the police, legalize prostitution, shut down prisons, free busing, government-run grocery stores. These policies have never worked wherever they've been tried. Part of the reason why we have had so much immigration into the United States is because people are fleeing countries that promote these policies, whether it be in Eastern Europe or in South and Central America. They don't work. And yet here we are on the verge of electing an avowed socialist as mayor of New York City, the financial capital of the world. You will see a mass exodus out of New York. It's not just about federal dollars. The tax base will deplete because businesses and those who can afford to leave will. And that will be catastrophic for New York. It's part of the reason why yesterday when Kathy Hochul and Hakeem Jeffries were both asked, is Zohran Mamdani the future of the Democratic Party? They both stuttered and stammered and couldn't get out of there fast enough because they know this is a disaster for the Democratic Party to have an avowed socialist leading the charge in New York City. He will become the face of the Democratic Party. And it is not good for New York. As a lifelong New Yorker, this is a disaster. And it's part of the reason why, when people go to vote tomorrow, choose wisely, because this is going to be catastrophic.